Hello everyone, and welcome to the Quarantine Musician's Guide to Reaper. This series' main purpose is to introduce those of you out there trying to get into music writing and production during these weird times, but don't feel like there are enough resources to get started when you don't have a ton of experience working in similar environments. I'm going to try to make these videos as objective, concise, convenient, and relevant as possible for all kinds of musicians trying to get their feet wet in the world of recording and sharing the stuff they make. For now, the earlier episodes will be more general, and will serve as a general overview of basic things you can do to get started and make wiggly air come out of your speakers. But as the series progresses, we'll get to more detailed and nuanced elements of music production and how you can use certain tools to really get the sound that you want. So, Episode 1. What's a DAW? Why do you need one? And why do I personally recommend Reaper to those of you who are starting out? DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation, which when you think about it, is a pretty vague term. All it is just some computer software that takes an audio and does stuff with it. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of options to choose from, especially when you don't know exactly what you need. However, a few things are super important to consider. Your computer operating system will automatically limit the choices you have in terms of software. For instance, Logic, a very popular DAW amongst producers, can only run on Mac OS. Fortunately, many DAWs do not have this limitation, but might discourage you from buying them for other reasons, like how many built-in functions and instruments there are. By looking at the screen, however, you've probably realized why I personally recommend Reaper to people starting out, and I'll show you why this is important in a moment. Reaper is cheap, stupid cheap, compared to a lot of its direct competition, and will run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. However, its two big drawbacks to those other alternatives are things that you can't ignore. One, from a visual standpoint, Reaper is not particularly attractive. There are environments that are much more polished and streamlined, especially if you know what you're doing and have already developed a personal workflow. The other con here is that Reaper comes with essentially no instruments and plugins that will actually make music for you, although its built-in effects and plugins are super powerful and can definitely compete with their expensive alternatives. But you will need to find either cheap or free plugins if you need instruments like synths and drum machines to create the music that you want. However, let me show you why financially this is still a pretty good option. You've probably done at least one Google search in your life for various audio workstations. So here's a couple that you might have come across that are a little bit more expensive than Reaper might be. FL Studio. In order to actually be able to record stuff, you're going to be dishing out at least 260 Canadian dollars, and these are the prices you're looking at if you actually want plugins and such. Ableton Live, $377 for the standard edition, and $630 for the suite. Pro Tools Non-Ultimate is going to cost you almost $800 for a one-time purchase, while to work with the Ultimate version, you're going to be stuck with paying an annual subscription of almost $1,000. Last but not least, we got Steinberg Cubase, which is a nice, cool $900. And you can probably see why Reaper in this world is a fairly good alternative, considering that a discounted license, which is a license that you can buy if you don't make more than $20,000 US a year as a business, is fairly cheap. Last but not least, if you're working remotely and are social distancing and would like to use Reaper at home, you can download a free temporary Reaper license. How cool is that? By the way, I'm personally not paid or endorsed by Reaper in any way to make these videos. This is just really, really good software in my opinion, especially for beginners. Now, before we continue, I have one more important disclaimer for this series. Unfortunately, there are countless elements that can make someone's computer setup unique, so I can't, and won't, address anything specifically related to hardware and setting up inside of the software, because I do believe that there are other people that can explain this stuff better than I can. So, you've downloaded the trial, gotten a free temporary license, or just decided to buy Reaper outright, and this is what you're greeted with when you open up the software. By the way, if you don't particularly like what you're looking at, you have the option of changing themes from the options menu to either one of the themes available stock, or one that you've downloaded from either the Reaper forums or someplace on the internet, right over here. Looks aside, however, there are a few things that you want to make sure you understand before I let you loose on your first recording adventure. Before you do anything, please, please, please save your work in a new folder. One thing that Reaper does not automatically do that you should really get into the habit of doing before you do anything else is creating a new folder for every single project that you make. The reason why this is important is because when you record hundreds and thousands and millions of takes, they're all going to go to the same place, which is going to start making organizing all of it a kind of pain in the ass. So, before you do anything, please go to File, Save Project As, and start a new folder, inside of which you can then save your Reaper project as normal, and everything you record is going to be dropped right into here, nice and organized, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. Once you've made that into a habit, you can head into your Preferences window and make sure that both your recording and MIDI devices are installed correctly, like so. Here's your audio, here's my audio device, and here's my MIDI device. For reference, I'm using a Scarlett 18A20 interface. with all of its 18 inputs and all of its 20 outputs and MIDI in and out enabled. Once you've done this, you can start adding tracks by either right-clicking or just pressing Ctrl-T. By default, your timeline will be set to measures and beats, with a grid showing you where these are located. You can either enable or disable the grid, and snapping to either the grid or items on the timeline. You can adjust the tempo and time signature of your project down here, or you can create a marker in your timeline to automatically change these values mid-song, like so. You can enable your metronome, which will always follow the tempo and time signature in a timeline, and adjust its various settings over here. And you can easily undo or redo actions using these two buttons here. Lastly, if you're ever in doubt about what a certain action does and what its keyboard shortcut is, you can always head to the action list right over here and marvel at just how many things you don't know yet. Finally, if you want to record something, here's some things to keep in mind. Once you've armed a track to record, you can choose your input, enable or disable the monitoring, and go to town with whatever you've decided to make. You can reorder your tracks however you see fit. You can rename them. And you can change the colors to make the tracks easier to see. Last but not least, there are tons of places where you can adjust stuff like volume and pan, but for quickest access, I'd recommend just doing it down here. Volume, pan, etc. One final note to finish off this episode. If you're new and just getting used to how this software works, do not be afraid to make mistakes and play around with the things that you've recorded, because everything you do can be used as a learning opportunity to make your recording sound better in the future. Try double-clicking and right-clicking everything you see on the screen and see what options and parameters you're able to change. You might find that a lot of this process is just trial and error, and I really advise you to not get discouraged when things don't work immediately, because they never do. And as with other things in life, practice is what eventually makes your music sound good. Peace out, and see you guys in the next episode.